back. Capital Pro After Hours. Have a little bit more time to kind of kick around the news of the day, and we talked a lot about the impending budget battle, guys. Eva Bermudez Zimmerman with us, CT Child Care for everyone, every man, woman, and child, right? Liz Kurantowicz, our Republican strategist, was, Rob Sampson kind of like talked about the Republican plans. Here's what he had to say about the number one word that everyone is using, affordability. Watch this.
Let's be absolutely clear about how we got here. The Democrats have controlled this state legislature and have had every lever of power in government in Connecticut for decades. They own it all. And what do we have to show for it? As was already mentioned, we are the top 3 in the nation for taxes, top 3 in the nation for the highest electric bills. We have record high property taxes, and it's one of the worst states in the whole country to do business. None of this happened by accident. So that the idea that the people who created this actual mess are now going to go around and tell us that they are going to fix the affordability problem in Connecticut is laughable.
Well, Lamont didn't agree with that, guys. Here's what he had to say. Watch this, then we'll get into it.
Look, spending caps and volatility, that's all about an honestly balanced budget so you don't leave a hole in the next year for the next governor, whoever that might be. And so I was surprised that Republicans, as well as a lot of Democrats, are throwing that to the wind. I think that's very dangerous.
And Eva, I know we talked about this during the broadcast program, but a lot of the Republicans say that if there's record surplus numbers, that means we're withholding too many taxes. Now, I know you as a progressive, you probably are saying, we got to be spending more money. Let's go. Come on.
Let's go.
Right.
What are we waiting
for? So don't give
for?
it back to the taxpayers. Let's just spend it on needed programs.
I think so. Right now, we have a legislature that's been doing a lot of responsible and good bailouts. Honestly, it's been bailouts, and we want to actually take those bailouts and transform them into something sustainable. So looking at the emergency money that happened the other day ago for $500 million when the federal government was shutting down programs, that's a good use of taxpayers' money. Looking at the program that was created last year, like the Early Childhood Endowment, that's a good use of taxpayers' money. We have a surplus, let's be wise, we have a plan, and why not dip in and actually use it to help families and communities?
For instance?
For instance, childcare.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Childcare. So if we're going to dig into childcare, right now the return on investment is $14 per every dollar invested in the program. And that return on investment is not just for families who have kids. So anyone listening out there and thinking, well, childcare, why should I use my taxpayers' money to pay for other people's children just having kids? That's not that accurate. When you're looking at return on investment, you're looking at the economy, you're looking at why our stores close, you're looking at trying to make sure that you have more workforce. It could be from construction businesses all the way to insurance brokers. This whole economy survives off of families and making sure that we have more people living in the state of Connecticut. We don't want to become or create a scenario like Japan where we're aging out and there's no kids being born. We do need a workforce, and that workforce right now needs to be educated and start early. So that means investing early and using programs like the Early Childhood Endowment is a wise use of that surplus money. So I'm not in disagreement with what the Republicans are saying right now in regards to using the surplus money creatively. I just don't agree with how they're panning it out to give it back to the community. I want to make sure that it goes into social programs that already exist.
Yeah, and Liz, as we talked about this during the broadcast program as well, you kind of, as a Republican, you kind of are in sync with Eva on a lot of these issues when it comes to child care.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think every economic impact study that you can find indicates that the more you invest in early childhood education, the better off you are, both for an educated workforce, but also particularly as it affects women in the workforce, and allowing and availing women the opportunity to be full-fledged working members if that's what they choose to do, and also being moms. And it's critical. And when you talk to the business community, you talk to trade associations, having affordable childcare is critical to making Connecticut a better place for our workforce, which means we have a better economy. To me, on the budget side of things, what's interesting is like the governor says we can do his $200 rebate or $400 rebate, but the Republicans is a bad idea. And so to me, it's like, well, we can break the rules for my idea, but we can't break the rules for the Republicans' idea. And so, you kind of lose people. I think As soon as you start to talk about these things in terms of millions and billions, people's eyes sort of glaze over their heads and they're like, well, it doesn't really impact me. These are too big of a numbers to have an effect on Connecticut families. And I think there's a huge trust factor when it comes to people believing that there's any politician that's actually going to do something that effectuates change in the positive for them and their families. And so when you look at some of the policies that have been put forward by Republicans, including eliminating the tax on tips and overtime and offering substantive property tax relief for wide, I think it's like 2 million residents in Connecticut. Clearly this is something that people are looking for, and Republicans are going to continue to push these agendas.
Yeah, but the odds that the Democrats or Ned Lamont, they did it in 2017, would actually take anything the Republicans said and said, hey, that's a pretty good idea. We should put that in our budget.
Well,
it's probably not going to happen.
Well, I'm not sure about that because you had Republicans. There were bipartisan budget votes that I'm sure, much to the chagrin of Republican candidates for governor in the past, Republicans voted for Ned Lamont's budget that cut income taxes. I mean, that's where Republican candidates for governor, I think, are going to have a little bit of a hard time in that Ned Lamont did cut taxes, the income tax, right? I mean, he's going to be able to run on that record, and that will certainly be a point of frustration for Republican candidates, and I know it frustrates Democrats.
I think if you have good ideas, bipartisan is possible. Not to hit a nail over the head so hard here, but with the Child Care Bill 2024, all of our bills were bipartisan, supported in both houses. 2025 was a little harder because we had a budget implementer, so it was a little harder to get the House on board to be bipartisan, but in the Senate, it was definitely bipartisan. If you have good ideas, good proposals, and you have the conversation with the governor and both chambers, then you can get it through. The difficulty now is execution. How do you get there?
And to be clear, part of the issue really was in the House, just the fact that the Republicans had a different way of paying for the program. It wasn't that the program exist or that it was a benefit to the greater good. It was truly just in the way in which it was paid for.
Yeah.
Okay. So, guys, Ned and the Democratic Governors Association, National Governors Association, and some poll numbers when we get back after a quick break.
Perfect.
All right, guys, we're back. And so last week in the news, Governor Lamont and a bunch of other Democratic governors said they will not be going to the annual National Governors Association meeting with the president because the president decided he didn't like two members of two Democrats, right? And he said, we're not going to do it. And everyone said, well, if you're not going to do it, I'm not going to go. Guys, is that a good idea? Probably is, right?
I don't think voters really care, to be honest with you. I don't think this is moving the needle on polling. I'm sure it makes them feel good when they're, we showed him. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody really cares except for the press.
Disagree.
Well, we care.
I totally
Disagree. As politicians care, right?
I totally disagree with the examples of like Rosa DeLauro. Like in the last month and a half, there's been comments from Democratic leaders saying or not saying enough when it comes to the president and how they're getting literally roasted on social media platforms for not going above and beyond against the president. And I think this is another example. Yes, I think there is a whole waft of the population who is paying attention, is looking very keenly for the governor and leadership to disassociate themselves and disconnect themselves from the federal administration because they're so toxic. And I think it does matter. I think messages and using every opportunity, including not attending something, does matter for just knowing that you have a team that's on your side, and the side being here, the population and the people who are against a dictatorship.
So, Liz, Aaron Stewart released some internal polls, and I'm always interested about people who release internal polls. No candidate releases internal polls saying, oh, wow, I'm getting blown out. Let's release that internal poll. But when they do release internal poll, it usually shows, well, I'm leading, and I'm leading by a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the goal here is Aaron is in a
Someone who has released internal polls.
Yes, I have quite frequently. Unfortunately, not to a general election victory, but I'll say that before the others do. The reason that you do that, Erin is in a dogfight for the convention, and she's trying to create some momentum for herself, manufacture some energy on the ground. I think that the entrance of Ryan Fazio into the race was something that they weren't expecting, and so they're obviously trying to get momentum in their direction. What's interesting is the poll that they released in August had a head-to-head with her and Ned Lamont that showed her as somebody that could compete with Ned Lamont. And sometimes what's interesting is what's not in the poll that you release. And there's no head-to-head in this in this poll that they've put out. I'm guessing that's because they're focused only on the primary voters. But to me, I
and
think
the pollster probably would put a head-to-head question in there, wouldn't you think?
you would think.
Yeah, you would think, yeah.
But I think the part to me was
Because
the
if the
fact.
pollster put a head-to-head question in there, and she was in 1, 2 points, or close, or beating him, you would see that.
Right.
question.
Yeah, well, right, exactly. If they liked the numbers, that's
Right,
what would have happened. I think to me, the fact that it's almost equal, the number that Aaron has, like 36, and the number of undecideds at 34, I'm not sure I would have put that poll out for that reason. I think that shows that she is not a unifying candidate, and that there are plenty of days left before the convention where people are still going to make up their minds. And I think the other problem with that is when you are perceived as the front runner, now all of a sudden you're going to draw the attacks. And don't forget, there's an independent expenditure out there that's already been putting out mailers and text messages in opposition to Aaron, who can essentially ramp things up and try and support whoever their candidate is, or drag Aaron down, and there's plenty of time still to do that. So I'm not sure that this will have the effect that Aaron wants, but I will say that the Fazio campaign calling this a push poll is also ridiculous.
Well, you called it fake first.
Well, a fake and a push poll. I mean, this is a very real poll, real pollster. The sample size is very small for a statewide, but obviously I think they were just sampling primary voters.
They have enough money to spend. They could have spent a little more on the poll, right?
Correct. But this is not a push poll. Testing negative messages against your opponent is pretty standard, and if you're not doing that, you're incompetent.
As Eva said during the broadcast program, it's not going to make a difference because
She's going to get blown out of the water. Ned Lamont's favorability. Here's a poll that really blows people out of the water: 60% favorability. So
I think it's 63 at Morning Consult.
Oh, my goodness, 63. Polls are a moment in place, and like Liz said, you have to be strategic as to how you're going to use them. I don't quite understand why she's using this one. I don't see how it helps her in the convention. This is a convention fight. I also don't understand all the decisions she's making with social media and her videos. Who is the audience here? Because if the audience is everyone in Connecticut, that's wrong people. The audience right now that she has to be hitting hard is a delegate fight for the convention, and God knows I know that. Very hard fight to make it through in a convention when nobody knows you.
And
Yeah.
Liz, so is Betsy McCoy going to make any noise here? It seems she's everywhere. It seems she's spending more time hitting Ned, it seems, than she is hitting her primary opponents.
Yeah, I mean, the fight for Betsy is really going to be qualifying for the public financing, and that will have an effect in the convention. I mean, in order to move on and get your primary money, you need to get 15% at the convention, and in order to get 15% at the convention, you usually have to tell the delegates, I have qualified
When do we
for
see the
public
next numbers?
financing.
When do we see next fundraising numbers?
In the end of the quarter, so you won't get it until March 5th. No, April 15th.
15th,
yeah, so right before the convention. But you would expect that they would have already put their applications in if they were going to be looking for CEP by middle of April. So
And those voters are also looking to see when they're figuring out who I'm going to support during the convention, if you've raised your money or if you're close. And if you're not even close, you're not even considered in the conversation.
right, and to that point too, there's no endorsements, right? There's been no sort of grassroots momentum in that regard, right? So she has been getting out there, getting her message out there. Her social media, I think, has been very good in terms of the content that they've
Mostly
put out.
whacking the governor. You know?
Correct, right? But you have, to your
You have
point,
to.
you're in a red meat fight here. You've got to go and convince the delegates that you're the person that's going to take it to Ned Lamont. And I agree. I think both Brian and Aaron have sort of taken. I don't know what their message is. Usually, if you're something different, you don't have to tell people that they think it already. And your message is, here's what I'm going to do for you. It's not usually about yourself.
Well, and
so
her Hail Mary is President Trump. I mean, she wants Trump's endorsement.
I mean, I would imagine that if you're looking to win a primary, that's the go-to. But I'm not sure he's going to play in the Connecticut primary either.
No reason for him to really.
Why would you? Yeah.
Why spend the time? What and if you're going to spend the time, what's owed to either Aaron or Fazio or even Betsy?
Well, and the endorsement that he gave for Leora Levy, it honestly, I would argue, didn't even have that much of an effect other than just getting voters excited to go out and turn out. But, there were like 93,000 Republicans turned out to vote in that 2022 primary. If I had to guess, if it's Aaron and Ryan, you're probably looking at about the same number of Republicans turning out to vote in this 2026 primary. So low turnout, low enthusiasm across the board for Republicans. So
right,
it's
guys,
tough.
one more quick break and a block to go. I think we're gonna talk about maybe a little Hakeem Jeffries, because I know that our friend Eva was kind of holding her tongue over there, my progressive friend. And then maybe we're gonna talk a little Bad Bunny to wrap it up.
Love
guys.
Bad Bunny. Let's go.
Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back. So Hakeem Jeffries was in the state stumping for John Larson, and as Liz pointed out in the broadcast show, isn't it nice that these big national people are coming in to defend people in a deep blue state?
Deep blue.
But having said that, but our friend Eva, our resident progressive on the program, had all she can do to say nice things about John Larson, because she believes it, but the progressive itch in her is like, can we get someone that is more like me?
Kidding me? Yeah, you're kidding me. I think all of the candidates right now in the state of Connecticut, when it comes to statewide seats and as well as,
but no one's whacking Rosa though. No one's whacking Rosa. Because Rosa promotes your issues.
Look,
you're not kicking her out, are you?
I'm not saying that I'm anti-Larson. I'm not anti-primaries right now because I want more. And if this primary means that we're going to get more out of Larson, then that's a good thing. More out of his message. And Hakeem, does that show me that Larson has juice? Sure, he's been there a long time, but it was owed to him. I'm sure they've collaborated and worked together for years. So of course Jeffries is going to come here and support him because they have to fundraise. And Connecticut is a perfect place to fundraise when all of them in Congress have no money. They come here. So it behooves him to support him.
Well, that's the funny thing. And we talked about this a little bit in between blocks on the broadcast program, is that you would think that Connecticut would be a place where Democrats were coming just to raise money for the party generally and not having to come in and raise money for members directly. But for the last 3 cycles now, Hakeem Jeffries and Democrat leaders have had to come to Connecticut to raise money for specific members. For 2022 and 2024, that meant Johanna Hayes. And now in 2026, we're talking about John Larson. I'm sure they're like, guys, you're a D+8 state. What are we doing here? Get your stuff together.
I'm not naive to how politics works in D.C. I worked there once before I moved back to Connecticut. And I understand there's value in having leadership who has been there for years and knows how to navigate the building, because it's hard to navigate. So those relationships that you have with Pelosi and Schumer, there's value there. But when you've been there 40 plus years, and right now there's a moment where everything seems like it's imploding, where the federal government is pulling their funding, we need more from all of those Congress people, and that includes Larson. Hold them accountable, make sure that they're fighting the fight, and this doesn't just mean coming to events and crashing them with tampons. It means going above and beyond and being there for the people and trying to call out the toxicity that the federal administration has.
I think this is such an interesting point, too, a broader point about our politics in general. You used to send people to Congress to get a job done. And what I'm hearing from you and from many people is, and it's on both sides of the aisle, by the way, it's not about going to Congress to get a job done. It's about going to Congress to make a statement. And I think that speaks volumes.
And to fundraise.
Correct.
Yeah,
right. Which starts, as soon as you get elected, you get a seat in the wall of phone booths,
Well, it's not even
and
that.
you got to
It's
start
just,
raising money.
They put these statements out on whatever issue,
Yes.
and then it goes right into their fundraising.
Yes.
And there's a little clip of someone on
That's
the House floor, and they say, "Send me $5."
$1,000,000%.
Yeah.
And I think that's your point, right?
Yeah.
Is that really being, and that's where I'm like, back in my day, right, when I started doing this, I worked for Nancy Johnson, and I worked with Chris Shays and Rob Simmons, and obviously Governor Rell, Joe Lieberman, Chris Dodd. These are people who went to Congress to get a job done. And what we're seeing is a complete turn across the board. This is not a Democrat-Republican thing. This is a Congress thing. We've seen a complete shift that it's not about doing the job anymore and being a member of Congress.
Right, before we I didn't just shut you off, but
It's fine. I don't
we
care.
had to get to Bad
Tell me
Bunny.
to
Now,
shut
it's Super Bowl last weekend, and we wanted to talk about this because it's an interesting issue. That number one leading group of Americans who are gravitating towards the Republican Party.
Yes.
Our Latino men and women.
I know
Puerto,
them.
Puerto Rican men and women, voting Republicans, registering Republicans, and that's that. A lot of that helped Trump become the president of the United States. And here they are, basically lighting their hair on fire over Bad Bunny and speaking Spanish. And I was telling Liz that you're too young to remember, but there was a time in America where every restaurant you would go into, they'd be playing the Gypsy Kings. If I hear Bumbaleo one more time, and no one knew what the Gypsy Kings were singing about, but they loved the Gypsy Kings.
That's
And
my dad's favorite band.
Exactly.
So ignorant, so xenophobic.
And now it's, at the Super Bowl, the people are just, and it's a political mistake, Liz.
Huge political
crisis.
mistake.
Yep.
I mean, in across the country for sure, but in Connecticut, I mean, we have the highest population by percentage of Puerto Ricans outside
yeah.
Puerto Rico.
It's like Puerto Rican consulate in Hartford.
The Hispanic vote in Connecticut is significant. And if you are going to chastise those voters, you're going to lose them.
You're gonna lose a lot.
And, it's the more interesting part, too, is when you're buying media for anybody, marketing purposes, certainly for a campaign, and I've had the opportunity to buy Spanish language media for multiple candidates. About 50% of the Hispanic vote speaks Spanish language in the home, roughly 50%. So you're talking to 50% of 12% of the vote statewide, and you're essentially saying we don't think it's appropriate.
Right,
that
and you
we hear
made
your
George
language.
Logan speak Spanish in an ad.
I didn't
the
make
more-
George do
Yes, you did.
anything.
Yes, you probably
The
did.
more that we
But-
see, the more that the more power that the federal government and the Trump administration is accruing, the more that they have to make decisions based on how much are they going to narrow their audience, right? And they're in this true divide. Are they going to stay the course with conservative Christians, with more reserved white America, and then ostracize and push out of the party, or push that sense of pushing out Latinos and other people of color? Or are they going to try to still be the party for everyone with that conservative aftertone? Here in Connecticut, it's the same thing playing out with candidates like Aaron, new candidates coming out. Who are they? Are they in allegiance and alignment with Trump, or are they in allegiance and alignment with the Republicans here in the state of Connecticut? I can tell you that my mom voted for Trump the first time around. She was one of those Latino voters who does not believe in abortion, who has more conservative Catholic thoughts. And then second time around, she's like, no, I can't do it. And right now, she's still searching and figuring out what's her path forward. So what the federal administration and what Connecticut
Certainly not with her daughters.
Oh, God, it was so many debates and conversations. She says we're not allowed to talk politics at home in the dinner table, and that's just a nightmare. But nonetheless, she is a reflection of what's happening right now in all of America. And Bad Bunny is a conversation where you have to make a decision. Who are you really as a voter? Are you a voter who says that you're MAGA, that you're conservative, but you love Latinos and you're not racist? Or are you actually in it for just a white America and that's how you are aligning? And I think people have to decide in the next midterms which path are they taking, and the party here in Connecticut definitely has to decide.
Just on a personal note, there's one thing that really got me was this sort of assertion that this was un-American. And 1 in 5 members of the active duty military is Hispanic. When you look at the percentage of our military, 2.8% are of Puerto Rican descent, and Puerto Ricans only make up, I think, is 1.8% of our entire population. So Puerto Ricans are not only contributing, Hispanics overall, but Puerto Ricans are contributing well over their percentage of the population when it comes to defending our country. So to make those kinds of assertions, to me, is wild. And I'm just going to say this. The White House used Daddy Yankee's Gasolina on one of their videos, and they just use Cardi B's I Like It on one of their videos. So they're perfectly fine to have those songs as on their videos, but they're not okay with it being in the Super Bowl.
For After Hours, many thanks to Lizzie and Eva for hanging around a little bit after. And, all right, guys, see you next week.
Peace out.